Okay, everyone, we're going to get started just about now. Like I said, if you see someone come in and they're heading in the back and there's a seat open next to you, don't be shy. I know what it's like to stand throughout an entire session, and it's not the most fun. So thank you all for spending your morning with us. We are going to be covering finding your place in planning. So I'd like to take a thank you to the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, who is putting together this series, the Planner to Leader series. This is the second part of the series. Yesterday there was sort of a personal branding session. Today we're going to talk about a lot of things, to be honest. And then tomorrow there will be another session on kind of navigating into leadership roles. So take a look at those in your little pamphlets. So with that said, I will get started. So today, the speakers that we have, we're all happen to be UF grads. A lot of us met in school, but we have now been floating around the industry for quite some time. And we're going to be covering the following topics. So myself, I'll be covering employer benefits and job hopping. Then we have Kyle Dost, our pivoting extraordinaire, who is going to cover unknowns, higher education, and imposter syndrome. Then we've got our technical specialist turned more project management lately, talking about breaking the analyst mold. And lastly, our public sector guru, Alvi Marie Corrales, who is going to talk about the public sector. So getting right into it, demystifying employer benefits and the go, no-go of job hopping. So before we talk about that, a little bit of information about me. Who is this individual giving you advice unsolicitedly? So I'm a senior transit planner at Benish. I also teach Intro to Geographic Information Systems at the University of Florida. Fun fact about me, my apartment doesn't allow dogs, so instead of dogs, I've got a couple hundred compost worms that live underneath my kitchen sink. They don't wag their tails at me like a dog would, but they still kind of noodle. And I have about 7 to 8 years of experience in the planning sector. So before I really dive into my slides, I'm seeing a lot of diversity in the group, and I love that. So I'm going to do a quick little hand-raising poll. If you have about 0 to 5 years experience in the planning industry, can you give me a little? Okay, good. So like 40%. And then I'm going to go 5 to 10. Okay. And then how about 10 plus? Okay, wow. So we really have people from every walk of life. That's great. Happy to see you here. Hopefully this first slide will apply to everyone. So I did some digging to look into the job market in this economy. And I wanted to give us all a primer on where planning stands at the moment, especially in the state of Florida. So I grabbed some data from the Bureau of Economic something or other. I will gladly tell you the exact source. To look at planner salaries, the 2023 median wage, we can see that South Florida has some of the highest wages. Orlando, Central Florida also has high wages. And then kind of interestingly, there's a little spot in the Panhandle that's got really high wages. And of course, if you look at the cost of living and compare it to this map, they're going to look very similar. So something to think about, just because a salary looks higher in a certain place, we all know this, look at the cost of living as well. So I did some research. In the past 30 days, it looks like there were about 55 open new job postings that included the term planner or urban planning. I looked at APA Florida and Indeed and LinkedIn to get that number. We have about 2,800 urban planning professionals in Florida, and these are individuals, doesn't include planning adjacent. We have a lot of planning adjacent individuals in Florida. The median salary is about $78,000, and if you have 3 to 9 years of experience, which we thought might be kind of the range that would be in the room, but perhaps proven wrong, that's closer to $70,000. So just a note on equity, because we are looking for that equity credit, we do want to take a moment to point out that women still earn 91 cents to a man's dollar, even when adjusting for experience, and that's specific to the planning profession. And 80% of planners identify as white. I myself am one of those. And 60% identify as male. And then pay inequality actually seems to increase as time goes on. So if you are a person in a place of privilege, maybe things to consider when you are moving throughout your career is to lend a hand to others and make sure that we're not overlooking other individuals. So the outlook for planning is actually looking pretty good, especially compared to other states. So some people might come into this industry, and I know that times have changed economically, but like, oh, is this going to be a career that I can make my living on throughout the span of my life? Well, good news, it looks like, yes, you can, at least in the state of Florida. Planning jobs are expected to increase 10 to 16% in the coming decade, and that's compared to about 4% nationally. So if you're in planning, Florida is a good place to be. So the takeaway that I take from that is that it's an employee-driven climate, and there are more new jobs than there are new planners. And so I would just say, don't underestimate your value as a worker, especially at this current point in time. So some of the main needle movers for increase in salary, and this is based on, unfortunately, the 2018 APA salary survey, so it's a little old, but I think the point still stands. Education was the top needle mover for increase in salary. Second was years of experience. This makes a lot of sense. And then third was what sector you're in. And by sector, we're talking like, are you military? Are you private, public sector, that sort of thing. AICP did change and increase the salaries, but not as much as these three factors here. So I'm not saying don't pursue your AICP, but maybe if you haven't done a higher education degree, maybe that would be something to look at first. So now, demystifying the employer benefits piece. So I know for myself, when I got my first job offer, I took it not entirely knowing what the package meant for me. If anyone else feels comfortable answering the question, when you took your first job, did you take it fully understanding the benefits and the employee handbook? If the answer is no, raise your hand. Okay, great. So it's So, I mean, at this point, it sounds like a lot of you have already had your first job offer and are well beyond your first job. But for those of you who are perhaps not, I'm going to go through these items. These are things that I wish some fairy godmother had told me, and so I am trying to do my due diligence to pass it on to you others. Health insurance. So, and these are benefits in order of financial value. I did research on this. So key considerations: the monthly premium, the coverage level, whether the employer contributes to a flexible spending or health savings account. The average, we'll have this PowerPoint later, so I won't go through every single digit that I pull up, but I did want to give you some background information on what the average value of these packages are so that you can perhaps compare them to your own coverage. So the average dollar value of health insurance coverage from an employer is about $8,500. That's over a year. And so if you don't know what your employer is contributing to your health insurance, when you do your taxes, you can look in the W-2 box, DD. So save this for later for tax season. You can kind of see what you're getting. Also, things to consider: the retirement match, 401k, pension, deferred compensation. On average, this is 3 to 10% of your salary. If you were below or above that range, you're out of average, and that could either be good or bad. So, and also consider the vesting period. So that's something that a lot of people don't think about, and maybe don't understand what the vesting period is, but you may not have, quote unquote, rights to the employer match that you're given if you don't stay for 5 years. So maybe you had an employer match your 401k for 4 years and you decided to leave in the 4th year. Now you kept your own money, but you've kind of lost what they put in there. So something to really think about when job hopping. Lastly, bonuses, company stock, APA dues, conference costs, and loan forgiveness. These kind of fall into $0 to tens of thousands of dollars in value. So again, consider the strings tied to these. For example, sign-on bonus contingent to staying with the company for 2 years, or loan forgiveness, but only after 10 years, gains on company stock that are not realized prior to 5 years, things like that. So we have an example. This is Planner Jane. You'll see Planner Jane throughout the course of our presentation. Planner Jane works at company left and has a salary of $80,000. 401k match 10%, PTO and holidays add up to $25,000, $7,500 in bonuses, monthly insurance costs $120, but employer contributes $120 to HSA. Then Planner Jane gets a new job offer. Off the bat, $30,000 more in salary, $110,000. 401k match, less, but still within the average. PTO and holidays add up to 25 days. No bonuses. Monthly insurance is more expensive, but it's a PPO. We're not going to get into that. Whatever. So, just at first glance, let's say, okay, raise your hand if you think the new offer is dollar value more than the current job. Okay, it's kind of a trick question. So I did some calculations, and actually I looked at a lot of job offer comparison tools, and I can tell you that the Rutgers Career Center job offer comparison tool was the best that I found. So if you're looking for a good one, I would go with the Rutgers one. So spoiler, it's kind of a trick question because they're not that far off, right? I calculated the effective pay of current job to be $102,000 and the effective pay of new job to be $107,000. And then that's where you get into what's the difference? Is $5,000 worth it for me? And that's where you have to look at the other considerations. Other financial benefits to consider. Again, we're talking about APA membership. We're talking about training budget for conferences. Are there tuition reimbursements if you're looking for a higher degree? Does it pay overtime? In the private sector, you will find most do not pay overtime. So a good question to ask is, do you expect people to work more than 40 hours a week, and are they compensated for that? Tuition reimbursement, quality of life considerations. Perhaps you want to start a family or something like that, or if you have an aging family member that you might need to take care of. Do they have parental leave, sick leave, short-term disability? Is there a hybrid workplace type of setup? And ensure that when you're considering that for yourself, that is written plainly in the employee handbook. Having someone tell you verbally, oh, well, we don't have a policy on a hybrid, but we're pretty flexible. I personally would not feel great about that. You want to make sure that they have a written policy that reinforces what they're telling you in the interview. Work location, gym, that sort of thing. Decreased hour schedules. If you needed to go down to 32 hours a week, would they allow you to do that? Things like that. Lastly, professional development considerations, and this is not really a financial consideration, but it's very important, especially at that couple years level, right? Are there defined career tracks? Is there a clear path to promotion? If not, and if you're the person that is looking for that, maybe you want to look for, maybe the money is less important than the support and the career guidance that you might get from a formalized workplace, and internal training or leadership programs. So, when to hold them and when to fold them, right? What should Planner Jane do? Should she take that $5,000 raise at the new job? Should she stick it out at her current job? It's complicated. Use a job offer comparison tool to aid in that decision. Again, the Rutgers one is nice. It has both a financial component and a internal values component. It's really easy to imagine the grass is greener on the other side, or you see this shiny big number, $110,000 compared to $80,000. Wow, this is going to change my life. Well, dig a little deeper. And the last piece that I'll leave you with is ask around in your network. If you're looking at a new potential opportunity, confide in a trusted colleague. You don't want to go and spread your business to everyone, but if you have someone you can trust, say, have you ever worked with this organization? What is their reputation? You might find that their reputation is not all that great. And then do you want to be affiliated with that organization? So, yeah, that's my piece. And with that, I'll hand it off to our career pivot extraordinaire.
Career pivot, topical pivot. Thanks, Sophia. Real quick, while I am pivoting, folks in the back, there are seats in the front. I will not be offended if you want to come take a seat. Standing can be a little daunting, so just feel free. A little bit about myself before I talk to you about some of my topical areas for today. So first and foremost, I'm faculty with the University of Florida's Department of Urban and Regional Planning. So I have made that pivot, at least. I have combined about 7 years of experience in the field, of course, in a couple of different areas, private practice and then academia. Currently pursuing my PhD, so I got to go home and do homework tonight in my hotel room. Super stoked about that. And a fun fact about me, I am an avid houseplant collector. So if you see me on Zoom, they do rotate in the background, but there are plenty to go around. Okay, so 3 of the topics that I'm going to be talking to you all with you all today about are unknowns. How do we navigate those? How do we kind of get proactively in front of those? Higher education and navigating imposter syndrome, right? So how do we kind of unpackage that topic? So unknowns. I would just, as we're talking about Planner Jane, consider Planner Jane to have Planner Jane consider also the team. Right, so a lot of us have maybe made some career changes or position changes, and I hope we all know, yes, the job matters, the job is important. Sometimes who you work with is even more important, right? Okay, so think about the team, think about how you fit in with that team, and synergize with them. I always have fun with this question, so I am going to ask for a hand raise. We're not going to break out into dreaded small groups, so just humor me with the hand raise at least. I want to know when you all discovered planning. Okay, so I'm going to start at kind of the younger age and work our way up, but keep your hand raised as I go through these categories. How many of you discovered urban planning in elementary school, like K through 12? 1, okay. How about maybe high school? Maybe you had someone come in and guest lecture, had a mentor, so keep those hands up. We've got 2. How about undergrad, right? Okay, a couple folks in undergrad, most folks in undergrad, okay. How about, keep them up. How about masters, right? Maybe you went through undergrad in a related field, then came, okay? And then everyone put your hands down. How many of you discovered it on the job? Okay, significant numbers, right? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we find ourselves in the seats of planners, not really knowing what planning is. So those are unknowns, right? As you navigated through your life as a child, as a student, we don't necessarily know about planning. My go-to quip is, you ask a 3rd grader what they want to be when they grow up, they might say an architect, they might say an engineer, I want to be a dentist. They're never going to say urban planner because really they just don't know it exists, okay? So let's all take that with us and do a little education along the way. So unknown unknowns, right? If you were to ask me about planning education, I did not know through my undergraduate, graduate, or professional world and life that this was even a career path. Okay, so just being open to kind of these opportunities that come your way and thinking about, it's a jump, it's scary, it's a pivot, but sometimes it can be a good fit for you. The last note here is failures can be just as important as successes. Everyone deals with unknowns. No one is omniscient, right, and knows all of these things. Learn from them, right? Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone learns as they go. Everyone kind of has a little bit of a faltering here and there. Grow from it, learn from it. That's the important part. Not the failure, not the mistake, growing from it. Okay, so the role of higher education. I put education in here because I do think it's really important, especially for those folks who have found themselves in the seats of planners, maybe never taken a planning theory and history course, maybe diving into a very niche field of planning without having the generalized planning experience or knowledge. So it's not just an undergraduate degree. It's not just a master's degree. There are certificates. There are training programs. There is on-the-job education, right? All of those are educational learning moments. So continue to put those in your pocket as they come your way. Of course, Sophia did mention AICP. Thinking don't put the cart before the horse, right? Sometimes it's better to work your way up to some of these accolades. Sometimes it's better to take baby steps versus giant leaps. For those of you taking giant leaps, Godspeed to you. I feel comfortable in my box sometimes, and sometimes it is good to do that, but thinking about those little micro professional trainings along the way are important. Helping to identify the unknowns, okay? So this is where education can come in because you get that generalized understanding and basic understanding, foundations of planning, how many different facets of planning, the different approaches, why we consider ourselves to be advocates. Looking at planning as a field from the 1940s, 50s, 60s is drastically different than what we're doing today, right? So getting the contextual awareness of our field and our profession can come from education. For instance, we put in here, Sophia mentioned this too, military planning. I've got an undergraduate, a graduate, and I'm in a PhD program. We don't talk about military planning, and it's a growing field, and it's a huge facet of what we do. And maybe you aren't a military planner, but you are planning for communities that have military personnel or military bases or infrastructure, okay? So it's one of those unknowns that comes your way. You got to navigate it. I also like to think of education as providing some safety nets, right? In the professional world, sometimes we feel like every decision, every action we make is kind of walking on a tightrope. Like, I got to take this step forward, I'm balancing. I got to take another step forward, I'm balancing. When you're doing education, it's a time to explore. It's a time to kind of take those risks because you have a safety net, right? It's all about throwing out those wild, wonky, crazy ideas, seeing if they stick. Sometimes you can't do professionally what you can do in an educational setting. So some of those, of course, are internships, testing new theories and approaches, having sounding boards, right? Sometimes you don't want to go to your peers because you feel like you might be judged, right, as a professional. But you go to your classmates, you go to your colleagues, and make some pivots and see what they say along the way. So learning, I believe, should encourage trial and error because sometimes you can't do it professionally. And then this final bullet, navigating the profession with familiar faces, that's what education can help provide you as classmates, colleagues. And I do remember sitting in, I can't remember exactly which class, but Alvy Marie, Sophia, and I went through our graduate program together, and a professor of ours said, look around, these are the folks you're going to be planning in Florida with. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, sure, okay. Okay? Sometimes professors know what they're talking about. Okay, and I think this is my last slide. Navigating imposter syndrome. How many of us have felt like this middle pencil, just not stacking up? You've had better days, you've seen sharper moments. And I remember these motivational posters from K through 12 public schools, right? This kind of like, persevere with like a grandiose background, right? So, I think the intention is all well and fine here with surround yourself with who you want to be. You always want to have those aspirational peers, but you also want to have peers that you can confide in and feel equals with. So recognizing your position amongst your peers with your supervisors, going through planning school. How many of you have gone through planning school? Undergrad, grad? Okay. You have professors that you looked up to, right? Like you're learning from them. Like you have such reverence for them and their knowledge, right? Well, I'm standing in that position now, and I feel like sometimes an imposter, right? I'm like, I learned from these folks, and now I'm teaching classes, and so, just to say, there's always going to be a starchitect. There's always going to be that professor that you look up to, and there's always going to be that planning director or someone higher up that you admire. one day you may find yourself in that position or working not underneath them, but alongside them, okay? You earned it. You're there for a reason, all right? So have some moments of reflection. Think about where you landed and how you got there. You end up where you are supposed to be and on your path, okay? So just have that moment of self-reflection. This is meant to be a little empowering. And this is a do as I say, not as I do, because aspirationally I want to do these things, but sometimes the time isn't there. But some practices to turn that imposter syndrome around on itself and make it beneficial to be empowering. Keep a running resume, right? How many of you do this, where you keep kind of a list of things that I know Laurel does. You keep a running list of accomplishments every month, every year, because guess what? When we have those yearly supervisor check-ins, it's hard to remember what you did 11 and a half months ago, okay? And those were good things, not worth forgetting. So keep a running resume, even if it's just a simple list of accomplishments. Talk with your colleagues and peers, right? Have those folks that you can confide in and that you can feel comfortable having really honest, open, vulnerable conversations with. Have at least one, right? Work therapy is real. And lastly, have some supervisor dialogue, right? Have that healthy but professional relationship with someone above you. Maybe they can act as a mentor. Maybe they can kind of guide you along the way. At the very least, they can hopefully provide you with pointed feedback for how to improve along the way. Remember, growth is not always linear. We make pivots, we learn from our mistakes, and we keep going because it's all experience under the belt. All right, that's it for me. Kayla's up next.
Yes, thank you, Kyle. Hi, I'm Kayla Hutton. I'm a senior transit planner as well at Benish with a little bit more than 6 years of experience. Getting ahead of myself. And a little bit about me. I'm a third-generation Floridian and a one-time UF Athlete of the Week, but just a club athlete. Please don't get excited. So today I'm going to be talking to you about personal branding and how to break out of the analyst mold. Maybe you're stuck a little bit. So Planner Jane is back, and she's here to tell you that personal branding and professional relationships are very important. Keep up with them. She went to the personal branding session yesterday, so she's ready. She's got her 3 values. She's got her high value things that she knows and that she believes in, their core values that are important to her. So she has that, and she also knows her strengths and her passion. She's been around a little bit, so now she knows kind of what she wants. And she's aligned her career values to them. So with that, she takes those high-level points, her values, and she's got an elevator pitch. She polished it up yesterday also at the personal branding session. She had a few people to bounce it off of. And so she's excited to go to networking events and share it with others. She loves networking and getting out there. But also she knows that it's important to position herself as an expert in certain things in her field. Now she knows that she can't be an expert in everything. She doesn't try to do that. That would be very overwhelming. So she picks a few skills that she really likes, she identifies with, and she makes sure she stays up on those emerging trends, new technologies. I mean, we're kind of in this period where, I feel like every day I wake up and I see something new, AI, just stuff like that. Not everything is, groundbreaking, crucial, but she still keeps herself up and she knows what's going on in those specialty fields. But like I said, she enjoys going to networking events. She goes to APA happy hours. She tries to stay active. She also likes to volunteer at her professional committees or even just causes that are near and dear to her heart. Doesn't have to be always about, your professional affiliations. Even alumni events, whatever, makes you happy. But she also knows that it's incredibly important to have an online presence. She's active on LinkedIn. She makes sure that she's making connections, that she is sharing, she's liking, she's interacting with those that are important, those posts that are important to her. So make sure that you have a LinkedIn if you don't have one. But also she knows it's important to have technical skills, but also you need to bring your personality. She likes to be authentic as well. So we talked a little bit about hard skills. Like I said, pick a few things, be an expert, champion those things. Make sure that maybe you're the one that people go to. Maybe that intern or planner one goes to you to ask you questions. Networking is going to be something that's lifelong. Make sure that you're going to those APA events, those happy hours. They're so much fun. You'll get to meet new professionals, but you will also get to hang out with like-minded people and make some cool friends. So, win-win. But we're here to talk about how to get out of that analyst mold. So now it's also time to start asking for leadership roles. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to go back from this conference and be like, I'm project manager on that next project. It's mine. Don't do that. And don't say I told you to do that. But ask to lead a task that you've done a few times, maybe a little bit more. Start with one task that you're ready to own it. So go to your project manager, ask for that one task. This also might open up an opportunity to showcase your problem solving and your collaboration skills. You know that in that task that the department down the hallway, they develop part of the data that you're going to need. So you just reach out directly to them, ask if they can share it. Maybe you know that evaluation method that we use, all the time. This place is a little bit more unique. We need to pivot. We need to find something new. So you do the research, you bring it back to your project team, discuss it. Be a problem solver. Take initiative. And with your leadership roles, you might find yourself doing more presentations. So maybe you have great soft skills and you want to show them off. So you ask to lead that discussion group, the focus group, the public workshop. Probably right now or if you're an intern or kind of an emerging planner, if you will, you're probably dealing with a lot of data, and you probably know how to package it, make it look very nice. But now it's time to show that you can present it to the public, to elected officials. You can communicate it effectively. So kind of like what Kyle said, it's important to have a running resume, and I'll out myself. I don't do it as often as I should, but I'm so inspired after hearing this that I'm going to commit, just 1 hour a month. It doesn't, so it doesn't seem, like that much time, but it'll pay dividends. So I encourage, everybody, let's make a pact in this room that we're going to do 1 hour a month now. But it is very important because when you do those check-ins, you're like, I don't know. But that you did a lot of great stuff, in the quarter or whenever you do your check-ins. It's also very important to set fierce goals. I want to challenge everyone in here to set some fierce goals. Check in with your mentor because maybe you think they're fierce for you, but you're not even pushing yourself enough. So make sure that you're checking in with someone that's trusted because maybe you need to push yourself a little bit more, but also be flexible. Be ready to pivot. Maybe you set, to take on deputy project manager for a task or a project in 5 years, but it actually happens in 2. So time to pivot and make a new goal for yourself. Last but definitely not least, make sure you're communicating. Communicate your goals with leadership, your mentors, management, anybody that can help you get to that next step because everyone wants to, they want to help you. Everyone, we're friendly. We want to see everyone succeed. So we've talked a lot about, getting it more into leadership. But now let's talk about tilting the scale and kind of balancing between management and production. So like I've said, take initiative, identify improvements, be the problem solver. Show that you're ready to take on more responsibilities. Maybe that's 2 tasks next time. Also set 5 to 10 year goals. Like I said, be fierce, check in with your mentors. But also this may include not just personal career goals, but also now you need to be thinking about business development. Maybe you need to be taking clients out once a month. Maybe you need to be sending follow-up emails if you haven't done a project with a certain client that you really like to work with and you're ready to maybe reconnect. So also just great to reconnect with those that you've enjoyed working with. Those 5 to 10 year goals also include a little bit more business development. Also managing and guiding emerging planners. So when you lead that task, invite that planner 1 or an intern to help you with that task. They get the experience and you get to experience managing them. And you also get another layer of feedback. But managing and guiding emerging planners doesn't just mean at work. That doesn't just stop there. Reach out to APA, reach out to your alumni associations, any organization that you feel passionate about, and see if you can mentor there. So we're still on the analyst side. We still produce a little bit. Maybe we have some help from Planner 1s, but I'm still in GIS. I'm still having fun. I'm a GIS nerd myself, so I like to keep up with what Esri's doing, which I think if you like GIS, you know that they're always up to something. They're always scheming, plotting. It seems like every time I turn around, I'm like, what is this? So make sure that you know what that is, because these emerging planners are also going to come to you, and maybe they heard about this new tool. I mean, you don't need to be, a complete expert and be refreshing the Esri website, but it's important to keep up on top of those trends. Continue to showcase those achievements. Keep that running resume. If you're freelance or you do side hustles, maybe have a website. I've seen some beautiful websites that really showcase the work effectively. You'll see feedback is on both the analyst and management side. Incredibly important to always be getting feedback. That's how you grow. Especially with managing and guiding new planners, that's just another level of feedback that you can get. So now I'm going to pass it off to Alvi, and she's going to talk to us about the public sector.
Thank you, Kayla. So you're going to hear very similar things because everything overlaps here. But before that, before we navigate the public sector, I had a moment of imposter syndrome when Sophia called me a public sector guru. I had to share it. It happens. So my name is Albie Marie Corrales. I'm Chief Transportation Planner at the City of Sarasota. I have 9 years of experience. And something that I shared, and I don't know if my colleagues here remembered in school, I always said that I would never do transportation planning. Chief Transportation Planner, right there. So that is very interesting. Here I am. And a fun fact, I own 2 bakeries, one in Puerto Rico and one in city of Bradenton. Long gone. Long hours. Being a planner full-time and a bakery does not work. So I'm going to talk to you about navigating the public sector. And I've been in the public sector since I finished grad school. And a lot of the things that I'm going to cover is focus on local government benefits, not Sophia style, but local government benefits, opportunities for growth, planning versus administrating, because we see that a lot once you reach that leadership role. And then goals. So I'm going to ask you a very important question. How many of you have short-term goals? Yes. Of course, you need them. How many of you have long-term goals? Fantastic. I'm talking to the right people. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about is about setting those goals and sticking to them. That helps you communicate what you're trying to achieve to your supervisors, to the role that you have right now. And those are your goals are what you're going to use to tell them that you want more, right? So share them with your employer. You will, I would say, as early as at your job interview, right? Because they always ask you, what's your short-term goal, right? And they always ask you your long-term goals. Share them and continue to share them throughout your evaluation, your midpoint. I don't know what people do these days, but I know I get midpoint and in between. I don't know. I get so many. They're all good. Don't worry. So local government has its benefits too. Sophia talked about a lot of the health benefits, insurance, et cetera. I'm going to talk to you about the unspoken benefit of professional development, right? So a lot of the things that are really undisclosed, because when you're interviewing, when you're doing your job application, they don't really give you the employee handbook. We already talked about that. They don't give you your employee handbook. They don't give you a policy. You're not researching this beforehand. And sometimes they're not very public facing, right? Their websites don't have this. That particularly my experience, the websites don't have this. So a lot of the professional development, like previously mentioned, you have your AICP, your APA membership, leadership classes, you have certificates and certifications that you can pursue. That is something that you can ask your employer to pay for. But sometimes you don't know how to do that, right? One important thing that my supervisor at a previous role and just before the position that I have now, she would always say, learn the budget. Want to know why? That's how you get salaries increases. She was like, learn the budget, learn when to ask, deadlines, how to ask, and all those things, because that's honestly how you get salary increases. How can you ask for more if you don't even know if there's more? I think the important part here is how to provide that proper justification for getting any of these professional development opportunities and more. And that is basically when you learn the budget, you learn what the deadlines are, you have to ask about these things beforehand. But since you already told them about your goals, tie it back to the goal, your own goals, but also how you can help the organization grow, how you can make those tiny little changes, just like every time you go to a breakout session, you bring something new, even a little nugget, right? I went to a Main Street conference with my colleague here from the city of Sarasota, and we were in over our heads. We don't know why we were there, but we got nuggets. We got nuggets, and they paid for it. And they paid for it. It's because we have a Main Street Complete Street project, side note. But when you're asking for these professional development opportunities, especially those AICP dues, your APA membership, tuition reimbursement, review the fine print. The reason I'm telling you to review the fine print is because you may be tied to staying one more year with that organization, and that usually happens a lot because they're investing in you and they want to get that investment back, right? So read the policy set in place before you actually commit to something, because you could be tied to paying it back. Remember that. So in terms of growing your career, this is what I did in the past couple of years. Things that you can do on the job is attend conferences such as these that help you grow your career, grows your network, webinars, grows your knowledge, and you can bring it back to your organization. Managing consultant, Kayla had really good examples about these. I call it triple experience. I get to manage someone, I learn from it, I also learn best practices about projects that I can bring in a different capacity in the future. I remember my previous supervisor worked at a different transportation planning organization, and she reused a lot of the things that she brought to the transportation planning organization that we had. So remember that. Best practices, keep them, save it. Managing interns, like Kayla mentioned, good opportunities to grow your career, increases your supervisory experience. And I think on the job, off the job, I would say volunteering. For me, I need to volunteer into meaningful organizations. And I'm Hispanic, and and the way I do that, I'm part of the APA EDI committee, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm a subcommittee chair, and I'm also the organizer of Planner to Leader, so I took that leadership opportunity, right? The other volunteering, I am part of APA Suncoast, but I'm also part of the UF Urban and Regional Planning Advisory Council, because I wanted to give back to the people that helped me grow, right? And to the students that are around here. I see you. And something very important is finding mentors. Like I mentioned, previous supervisor, she was my mentor. She still is to this day, but I had 3 mentors around my career, one in bachelor's degree, one in my master's degree, and the one in my work life. So remember, mentorship is very important. This is a fun one, right? Once you grow your career, once you get to that leadership role, you have to think about how much planning you're going to be doing and how much administrative stuff you're going to be doing. And honestly, it is being there in different capacities. It's difficult because you still want to get out there and throw down with your planners and go to those public meetings and, reach out. You can still do that, but sometimes I don't even see sometimes my people there, like my administrative up higher ups. Hopefully no one is in here. So once you start growing your career, you shape yourself to be a leader, you're gonna be doing less planning. And do you really want that? So I'm going to give you an example. At the previous organization, I went from being a multimodal planner to being a principal planner to being the planning manager. And as the planning manager, I did 80% administration and 20% planning. I didn't get to do my maps. They used to call me Map Woman, and I wasn't Map Woman anymore. So just think about those things. Now, as the chief transportation planner, I still do administrative stuff, but I'm telling you, 60-40, big difference. 60% planning, 40% administration. I still manage people, I still negotiate contracts, I still do evaluations that a lot of people don't like. But just think about those transition roles, right? You're going from your mid-career, you want that leadership role, you are going to get there. And think about those things when that's going on. And I'm gonna bring this to a close so you can ask your questions. These are the recommendations that we put together for Planner Jane or Planner Juana. So recommendations for Planner Jane: you can't compare what you don't know. Ask yourself what you value in your next career move and ask the right questions to know if an opportunity will get you there. Second recommendation is find ways to navigate unknowns and build confidence hand in hand. Third recommendation, align your interests and goals. Seek out leadership opportunities, because you know you can. And the fourth and last one is set your goals, tell them what you want, and gain the experience to achieve them. Like I mentioned, Planner to Leader is brought to you by the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee of APA Florida chapter. Some of you received the Planner to Leader booklet. This booklet has additional information, additional resources that you can use in your career. Some activities. If you didn't attend the first one, you can do a little activity for setting goals. And if you scan the QR code, huddle up with a friend, network, that's why we're here. There's a page that you can scan if you didn't receive a booklet, so that way you have the digital version of that booklet. And with that, the APA EDI committee, these are ways you can contact us, and some social media. We also have a QR code if you would love to join. It's a very active committee. There's our chair. Our chair is in the chair. So now I am going to open it up to Q&A, moderated by our own Sophia.
So I'm not going to do the mic handoff, but I am going to kind of move about so that I can hear the questions, and then I will repeat them. Yes, we'll start right here.
My question would be, how did you choose transportation planning? Because at first you said you would never do it. Right?
Okay.
Because I think when you're new to planning, when you first come in, you don't know that there's different realms of planning, like resiliency and hazard and transportation. You just come in as a planner. So how do you choose what type of planning you want to do?
Okay, I'm going to repeat that because it's recorded, so this is for you all virtual people. The question was, there's so many flavors of planning, and Alvy talked about how she would never do transportation planning, so what led you to choose transportation as a sector?
Fully loaded question. Is this on? Yes, it is. So as I navigated through my master's degree, I realized that all the opportunities that I was having were related to transportation planning. Sophia and I used to geocode for Signal for analytics. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this because you use it for your safety and your crash statistics and data. So a lot of it had to do with the opportunities that I had, and I realized, hey, this isn't that bad. I wanted to do GIS, and then I realized, do I really want to do GIS 24/7? Sit down. Hey, I'm an introvert, but not really that bad. So that's how I got to it. It was more about the opportunities that presented themselves. Mm-hmm. Do you want to?
two other things, right? Unknowns, right? Like you just don't know until you try it, right? And maybe that's you're in a role and you're looking for something else and a different change. You can observe others, right? So that's the whole beauty of planning. Is sometimes, a lot of times, all the time, we're supposed to work together, right? And so navigating that as an unknown, right, is sometimes you just have to trial and error it, and it's a learn as you go, I think, situation.
Okay.
It's a good question, though.
Said I wasn't going to give the mic, but then I'm like, I don't want to repeat these questions.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Hey everybody, I'm Ashley from Fort Walton Beach in the Panhandle, and a couple of things that have popped up through like initiatives at work and then throughout this conference is tracking trends. So we get a lot of emails from APA and some trend information from that, but what other sources do you use like amongst your different disciplines to track planning trends? I'm a new planner and I don't have like a formal like background in it, right? Like, so to show that we are being responsible and engaging with the public to track trends, what would you recommend that we kind of look for?
Okay, so I can start and I'll be quick because I'm in academia, right? So I'm totally disconnected, right, from all of these trends that you guys are seeing. But I can share that one thing that I like to do is source from others, right? And so we have, roughly 110 students in our online program, master's program, all across the country, all dealing with very different niche types of planning issues, concerns, emerging trends. So sourcing from your networks, I think, a lot of the current trends I also just find by going on LinkedIn and like military planning. So, I think my takeaway is through your network, right, is a way to source, maybe not the hard numbers, but emerging keywords and emerging trends through that.
Okay, I'm going to also tack onto that one. I'm lazy. When I go home from work, I don't really want to research more trends, and I want to doom scroll on social media and relax. And so I build it into my doom scrolling routine. I follow Strong Towns. I follow the APA. I follow Enacto. I go and follow all of these accounts so that it's built into my daily crappy way of de-stressing. So that's my personal plug. Okay, next question. All right, I'm going to move to the front.
Thank you. My name is Dana. This series is great, by the way, because I literally last year I was having a conversation with someone who was like, "Oh, I wasn't going to do that. That was against my personal brand." And ever since then, I was like, "Oh yeah, I have a brand too, and I better do something with it, right?" Oh shoot, I'm blanking now. Okay, yes, job hopping. So what I also had as part of that conversation with that person was, like, well, how long have you stayed? Tell me your background. And she had kind of hopped around. She'd been at all these different places, which to some degree built her reputability and her credibility because she'd had all this great experience. And my question was, well, what's the shortest? You've been to all these places. Like, what's the shortest amount of time you ever worked at a place? And, her answer was 8 months. And so I get this call and I get this job offer, and I'm like, okay, this is risky because it's like the first in-house town planner that they'll ever have. And so I say yes, but then, you have that echoing in your mind of like, well, you can't leave because you can't job hop. But at the same time, I feel like us as planners, we have a little bit of grace there because sometimes we're hired just for project management for a particular, like a shorter period of time, or, because of politics, we might move around. So what is your consensus on like job hopping and how long is acceptable, or is there a time frame, and how does that look for a planner?
I can kick us off because I guess what was my title? Pivoter or something like that.
Yeah.
Professional pivoter. So and this is recorded, so this is going down in the books. The rule of thumb is, if you can find another position and get another offer, then you haven't waited too short of a time frame, right? If you can have something else lined up, then that's kind of an indication that it's okay to move. I would argue to contrast that, to give your position some time. 2 to 3 months is not enough time to explore all you could do within that role, all of the movement that you can make as an individual in that position. I'll be candid, I started my first position in the private sector and I stayed for 11 months. And at that point, I had to follow my gut and a new opportunity to hear where I am. But 11 months, I also felt like, I've explored. I've made the rounds. I've kind of seen all I can see. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. You're not even there for a season, right? So think about just giving yourself enough time to explore and try to make some of those moves to get what you want out of it. But ultimately, follow your gut, and that's easier said than done.
I would add to that on the contrary, I stayed in my previous job for 5 years, right? And there isn't really an amount of time that you should stay in a job position. For me, what I had heard was that you don't know everything that you need to know about a metropolitan planning organization until you've been there 5 years. Why? Because the long-range transportation plan happens every 5 years. So they used to tell me, you can still say you're new. But I would say sometimes, I understand. It's drawn upon and seeing, 1 year, 2 year. Sometimes that becomes a concern. But like Kyle said, follow your gut or follow my gut. I stayed there, I learned everything, and then, boop, went away.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like everyone kind of feels like don't be a serial job hopper and don't hop around too frequently. But the question really is the position I'm in fulfilling the needs, and is it moving the needle? And if it's not moving the needle, and if you have something else on the table that you think is going to move the needle, I think that's more of a metric than like a time frame necessarily.
Just want to add one thing. If you need to hop, I guess. But I would say make sure you don't burn any bridges. I think that's super important. If you are going to go, don't drop a bomb and then leave. So not really related to like go or no go, but like if you do decide to go, I would say, planning is small. Yeah.
Yep, this is probably last question. Okay, I see one. I'm going to see if I can squeeze through. I don't know. I'm doing the squeeze.
Hi, my name is Veronica, and I just wanted to hear advice on how you can find out about an organization's internal culture before accepting a job.
That's a really good question. I'll start. So I think this kind of goes back to one of the points on my slides, which was politely ask around. This is where having a network is really going to benefit you. Hopefully you have someone that you can trust that has either worked in that organization or knows someone who does and can tell you something about it prior to you signing your life away for the next year. That's really the only operational piece of advice I can give is if the bigger your network is, the more likely it is that you have a trusted person you can ask how they've experienced that organization without showing your hand and letting everyone know, including your current employer, that you're out shopping.
I have something too, is really take the interview process seriously. They're not interviewing just you. You need to be interviewing them. So when you ask with that open-ended question at the end of your series of your interview, what questions do you have for us? Come with questions of, what is the work-life balance like? Do people work on weekends? Is there a culture where there are happy hours and social events? That's a question that you can ask and should ask. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't be rude about it. But I've seen on social media, some folks are saying, okay, I've given you 3 references. I'd like a couple references of who's worked for you in the past. And so ask those hard questions and be challenging professionally and sensitively, but really lean into that interview phase.
Yeah. One of my favorite questions in an interview for the interviewee is, do you have career development tracks, or are there standard protocols for getting promoted? That's generally a pretty good indication that organization values your growth and wants their staff to grow. Whereas an organization that's like, we you kind of play it by ear. It's like, well, that's not going to work for my 5-year plan. Okay, well, yeah, I think we're right on time. We'll hang out for a couple minutes if anyone wants to talk to us, but thank you all so much.